A fresh Prince of Bel-Air drama is in the works, plus we're diving into some mind-bending sci-fi that will totally mess with your head. Get ready to blast off into the world of entertainment with Pop Culture Planet. Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of my podcast, Pop Culture Planet. I'm your host, Kristen Maldonado, and this is your weekly destination for some pop culture and chill. Now, each week we'll be talking with incredible experts, breaking down TV and movie news, and so much more. And in this episode, I'm super excited to have Steph Cozza of Aggressive Comics and Marianna Neal of Impression Blend joining us today. What is up, ladies?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. I'm so excited
Doing great.
to be here.
I'm so
Me
glad
too.
you guys could join me.
Man, thanks for having us.
So, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your entertainment origins, kind of how you got into content creation. Where did your love of pop culture come from before we get started? So, Steph, do you want to start?
Sure. So I've been kind of creating content for most of my life. I started a YouTube channel when I was 14, and then I just kind of, I don't know, I was always making films with my friends when we were kids. I had some like horrible videotape recorder that I begged my parents for, and we would shoot like really bad horror movies in the woods and like put them on YouTube, and they were terrible, but it was fun. And I just always grew up loving film and wanting to be a part of it. I went to film school. I was a PA on a few big feature films. I was in a casting department for a while. I worked at BuzzFeed for 3 years, which is where I got more into the online world. And then I started reviewing movies on YouTube in 2016. And I was doing more of like comic book movies and geeky stuff, which is why my channel is called Aggressive Comics. But it's now kind of evolved into a much more broad film review place. And that's kind of where I am right now.
That's so exciting. That's awesome. I feel like a lot of us just like, from a young age have gotten into all this stuff, creating our own projects even when we were young. I remember like me and my cousins would always put on like little musicals on the holidays, the creative stuff. But what about you, Marianna?
Well, I did not go to film school or create anything when I was younger. My background is actually in music. I went to a conservatory, so
Oh, wow.
I was always blogging about books and film. I had a blog for a while, and then I actually started on LiveJournal, if you remember what that is.
Oh,
Yeah, wow.
And then I randomly stumbled upon YouTube videos of people reviewing movies some years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I immediately thought, well, they must know what they're doing. Obviously, they're professionals, so I could never do that. And then I just randomly decided to give it a try. And I thought maybe 5 people will watch me and I'll have someone else to talk to about Game of Thrones, because that was my first video and it's still up there. Just me talking about season 4 of Game of Thrones. And somehow it just took off. And I've been talking about movies, TV, and books for the past 4 or 5 years, on and off.
Wow. Okay, now I need to know, you are into music, so what do you play or what do you do?
I am actually an opera singer, but I don't do that anymore.
What? Wait, okay, but also I know, Steph, you do music too, and so do I. So maybe we need to like have a little
band.
jam session sometime.
Let's go.
But Steph, you play a couple instruments, right? And
yeah,
you sing?
I sing. I used to sing in a band. I used to play bass in a band. I was in the marching band. I played the snare drum. There's a picture of me in it right there. I play piano, which is right here next to me. I think that's it. Ukulele, all sorts of things.
Wow. So we got a little.
I used to play
musical-
piano for a while. I started playing when I was 5, and then played for a while and then stopped.
That's awesome.
Got into singing.
Yeah, I can sing. That's it. I can't read music. I can't play anything. I just did a lot of musical theater. My brother is the musical one. He can play like everything. And I'm like, why did you get that gene? Why didn't I get that? But that's too funny. Yeah. And you guys also like to read. I know we were talking a couple of days ago about thrillers. So are you guys reading anything good right now?
I'm not reading any thrillers right now, but I did just we had a huge storm you live in New York. We just
Yeah.
had a huge storm and we lost power for an entire week. And so I was like, literally all I can do is read books. So I read like 4 books. I'm reading the
Nice.
Throne of Glass series right now. So I'm just plowing through it, but I'm literally obsessed with it. It's so good. I highly recommend it if you like fantasy. It's so good.
Are you reading anything, Marianna?
I was reading those thrillers we were talking about, which are what was that? Home Before Dark?
Is that
yes.
Ryan Sager's books.
Yes. So I was reading that and I'm kind of on the fence about them. I like them, but they didn't blow my mind. So now I'm reading this really weird kind of slightly dystopian book, Severance, which is about, it's kind of set in the before and the after the apocalypse. And it's like about this flu type thing that spread throughout the globe and people are turning into these really passive zombies that are like stuck doing the same thing in their routine. So like if they're at home and they got fevered, as they call them, they might be just reading the book and they just sit there and read their book without like realizing what they're doing. They're just stuck in that routine until they die.
Sounds like what we're going through right now.
That sounds way too real.
Way too real.
I'm like, I'm going to read it my fantasy world and step away from anything remotely like what's happening right now.
It's probably a better choice,
The most recent thing I just was reading was this Making of the Umbrella Academy season 1, which I was hoping was going to be like really like diving deep, but it's mostly just like pictures and like behind the scenes photos types of things. I wanted like in-depth interviews and stuff, so maybe they'll do that in a future book, but yeah. So is there anything that you guys have coming up next on your channels? Any new projects?
I'm just kind of winging it day by day.
I hear you.
I have a couple videos that I've shot and are taking me a ridiculously long time to edit, so I just keep pushing them off and like not ever getting to them. But I want to do some more long form videos where I do kind of like a watch with me sort of thing. And I'm doing one right now that I'm having a lot of fun with, where I'm rewatching all my favorite episodes of Supernatural before the finale, because I'm just like, I just need Supernatural content and it's on a hiatus because of the pandemic and there's like 2 episodes left and I just need it. So that's what I'm doing right now and I'm having fun. I don't know if anyone will watch it or care.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
That sounds awesome. Why not?
Yeah. I was gonna say, I hope one of them is the Charlie LARPing episode. That's one of my favorites.
Not on my list, but that is a good one. Maybe I'll have to add it.
I love that episode. What about you, Marianna? Any projects you're working on?
I have been working on, so I did part 1 of a special that was movies that changed my life, which people really enjoyed. And I've been meaning to do part 2 for a while now. And I kind of keep adding to it and editing the notes and then adding more to it and then taking something away. So I've been working on that forever. So I need to get that out because I will never think it's perfect. So that needs to happen soon.
Well, I see someone here, Matt, who thinks that you should do a singing video in the future. So say it.
No.
You're like, absolutely not.
You can't just casually be like, I'm an opera singer and then just leave us hanging.
Oh, yes, I can.
Too funny. All right, so now that we have done some introductions, we know a little bit more about you guys, let's dive into this week in TV and movie news. So I sent you guys a couple of little topics. The first one that I want to get into is the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is getting a drama reboot. I don't know if you guys had heard about this before, but there was a short film that a guy named Morgan Cooper came out with. It was a popular fan film where he reimagined Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as a drama. It came out last year and it went viral. Everyone loved it. It was like incredible. And Will Smith saw it and everyone just kept being like, this should be a show. And now it's going to be. They are going to be reworking an hour-long series as a drama, which is going to be produced by Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith's company, Westbrook Studios and Universal Television. And they're going to start pitching it to different streaming companies. And I mean, it looks like it's going to be really awesome. The guy who created this short film is actually going to be directing and co-executive producing. And, like, how cool is that someone who is just a fan, who is really talented, created this short, and how they're going to make it. That's insane. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts or if you watched Fresh Prince growing up or anything.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I was watching that trailer short thing, and I was completely convinced that that's the actual trailer for what's happening. And then I read that it was a fan film, and I was like, what? This looks so good. I've actually never watched Fresh Prince because I didn't grow up in the US. So I've seen like clips of it online, but I've never seen a single episode. But this, even from what I've seen online, this seems like such a different take on it that it immediately makes me interested. And I was thinking that, with all these remakes that are happening and revisiting old films and old series, like this is the way to do it, and just doing a completely different interpretation of it and giving a completely new look at what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think I agree with what you're saying, that it's definitely a fresh take.
Fresh.
And when I first heard about it, I was really like, oh, I don't know, because, I just hate this era of like making a franchise off of your nostalgia. Like, just please come up with something original. But when I saw the trailer and I read a little bit more about it, I was like, okay, this is actually original. I love the like reimagination of it. Like, it's not just like a reboot. It's like an entirely new thing. And I almost wish it could just be this show or movie or whatever it is without having to rely on that branding. I wish they could just make it an original story, because it seems so different from the show. But I mean, I get it. It makes sense. And I do love that it was based on a fan film. That's really inspiring as like someone who makes fan films from time to time, to see like, wow, that could actually like become something real one day. So I think that part's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's just like so inspiring to be like, something that you put out there into the world could maybe, actually be turned into something, and you could get an opportunity. Like, it makes me think about Broad City and Insecure, and how those were like web series originally created by these women who, kind of put their work out there. And it's like, wow, like someone discovered it and was like, yeah, let's do this for real. So I think that's really awesome. And I think, Marianna, like you were saying, I think this is actually a really cool take on like rebooting something. I think, we see so many reboots where it's like, we're just going to take the same thing and do it again with just like younger people. And it's like, okay, but like to see that they're like going to change the genre is like, oh, okay, maybe we should start thinking about doing things like that more if we are going to reboot things. Would love to see more original projects, but like, if you're going to do something completely different, that's really awesome. And I think it makes it so that like especially the fact that Will Smith is going to be involved, but like, it just makes it feel like, okay, like we don't have to compare it necessarily to the original, because it's going to feel really different.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it almost feels like in expanding the world in a way, and just seeing it from a different perspective, which is what, if you're going to do a reboot, then do that. Don't do the same thing that was before, but worse.
Yeah. I do think it's going to take me a little bit of like getting used to, because when I was watching the trailer, like as someone who's watched so many episodes of Fresh Prince a million times, I was like trying not to laugh, seeing these characters that I know so well being so like serious with each other. And I was like, what is happening? But I think I can adjust.
Yeah. And I just think this guy, the way he filmed it, it was so beautifully done. And I think it's awesome that they're going to have him be involved in a big way, like directing, co-producing it, or co-executive producing it. I think that's like the dream. Like, that's what you hope for something like this, that the person that you're a fan of sees it and is like, let's do this together. Like, I'm not going to take your idea. We're going to do it together. That's awesome. Yeah. So the next subject I want to get into is some upcoming Peacock originals. I don't know if you guys have checked out Peacock yet, but it's the new NBC streaming service. And right now they have a lot of like throwback stuff on there, and they're working on some original projects, or, some more reboots. And I think that people are wondering, like, could this Fresh Prince of Bel-Air potentially go to Peacock, since that was an NBC show? But there's some exciting new projects that I'm really interested in because they're starting their new like comedy slate with a bunch of originals from some heavy hitters, I think, from Tina Fey, who did 30 Rock, and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, from Mike Shur, who did The Good Place, and I believe The Office. So a couple of the projects that are coming up is a project called Girls Five Eva, which is executive produced by Tina Fey, Robert Carlock, and Meredith Scardino. And it's going to feature Sarah Bareilles, who I love. Anything that has Sarah Bareilles in it, I'm like, yes, please, I will take that. And it's basically about a 90s girl group who gets a resurgence when a modern day rapper samples their song. And so they were originally a one-hit wonder, and now they're kind of like, oh, let's give this pop star dream another chance. And then there's another project from the creator of The Good Place and Parks and Rec, Michael Shur, who is doing a project called Rutherford Falls with Ed Helms and Sierra Teller Ornella. And this is about like a small town in upstate New York and the Native American reservations that it borders. And it kind of is turned upside down when a local legend fights the moving of a historical statue. So that's honestly something that feels like very relevant to kind of what's going on politically right now. So yeah, these are a couple of projects that are coming out. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on, basically Peacock trying to get out there, get into the original comedy space.
Yeah. So I actually work for NBC, so I've been doing a lot of like Peacock promotional
Oh.
stuff. That's like literally all I think about. But I'm pretty excited for Rutherford Falls just because I'm a huge Michael Schur fan. I loved The Good Place so much.
Yes.
I love Parks and Rec. Like, I just love his mind, and I'm excited to see what he does. I also love that I believe it's like the largest indigenous writing staff on television, like ever, which
That's
is really,
amazing.
really cool that they're putting that representation not only in their cast, but also in their writing, which is super important. And I think that's awesome. So I'm excited to see how that goes. I don't know that much about it yet, but I feel like it's going to be good. I don't know.
I mean, that sounds awesome that they're going to have so many indigenous writers in the writer's room.
Yeah. It's really, really
Yeah,
cool.
it's a bit of a wait and see because you don't know until you see at least some of what's happening. But the more different stories we get, the better. So this can't be a bad thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that just learning that makes me more excited to check it out. And I think Michael Schur has done so many great projects. So I'm like, whatever he has next, I'm like, I can't wait to see it. And I mean, Tina Fey too, has so many big, awesome projects. And I love Sarah Bareilles, so I'm very excited for this girl group situation.
I don't know anything about Sarah Bareilles, but I do like Tina Fey. I feel like she's a bit hit or miss for me, but most of the time I enjoy her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this show I'm a little bit more like I'm not like I need a little bit more information before I decide if I'm like interested or not, because it seems like I don't know. It could be really fun, but they could like really bank on that 90s nostalgia thing and like go too far in that direction, but we'll see.
Very true, very true. All right, let's get into our last topic, which is that there is a Princess Diana musical that is going to premiere on Netflix prior to reopening on Broadway. So what I think is really cool about this is that this is going to be history making, the first time that a Broadway production is going to debut on like a TV platform before the stage production's official opening night. I mean, I'm a huge fan of, musicals and Broadway and theater. And I mean, already I loved Hamilton that came out this year. The fact that we, get to kind of make stage musicals accessible to people that aren't in New York. I think that's awesome. So I don't really know too much about the Princess Diana musical in general, but just the fact that it's going to go on Netflix, I'm like, this is kind of game changing that they're going to put this for people, like the full Broadway production, up for people to see before it even hits Broadway. I don't know if you guys are fans of musical theater, or if you have any thoughts on what that could mean for, Broadway or live productions moving forward.
That's kind of an interesting. I was thinking about that earlier, and with Hamilton, obviously that did well, but you had such a huge existing fan base that people were excited to see it again, or they've heard the songs and they want to see the whole thing. But premiering a musical that is meant for a live audience in a Netflix situation, I feel like that could go either way. It kind of concerns me because, uh, musicals and musical performing is really targeted at getting that energy exchange with people who are watching it. And how it plays to an empty room and translates onto screen without having a public there, we're going to have to see. But I don't know. I feel like it really could go either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I get it. Like the Broadway
Yeah.
industry is severely suffering right now, and it's a huge industry, and to have everything shut down, like they have to do something. So it makes sense right now, but I hope it's not something that continues. At least I don't know. I'm sort of on the fence about this because Broadway has this, it's so exclusive. Like you have to be in New York City, or you can see like an off-Broadway production like redone somewhere else, but it's so exclusive to like get to go to these really expensive most of the time shows that not everyone can go to, and there's so many people around the world that like want to see these things and they just can't get access to it because it's like a luxury for most people. And so it's nice to have that access. Like that they put Hamilton out, I think is really cool. I think that like people loved that because there's so many people who are fans even just from listening to it and not getting to see it at all. And so I think it's a cool opportunity, but I agree that it's really hard to translate something that's so live and interactive to like Netflix. Like it's crazy.
Yeah,
Well,
oh, go ahead.
good. Well, especially when you're dealing with movie musicals, that's still kind of a different situation because you have names that are famous and you have people who are like, oh, well, I don't really love musicals, but I'm going to go see it for so and so. Whereas this one, I feel like the audience is going to be pretty narrow, specifically people who have an interest in Broadway, but it could be really cool. And like Steph said, it's really nice that they're at least doing something and not just postponing everything forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is something for me that like, I think that I would have liked to see maybe something where something that's on Broadway or has been on Broadway for a bunch of years is put on streaming platforms to watch after the fact. Like I think to premiere it on Netflix, I don't know if that really seems like the best bet. I mean, I think that there are people that, love Princess Diana and would watch it. And I know like I'll probably watch it, but I think that to premiere it on Netflix seems weird, but in general, like the fact that like things like Hamilton or like you can watch Shrek the Musical, you can watch Newsies, the live productions, I think making those things accessible is really great. I just think it works better a little bit after the fact, even like Hamilton was still running on Broadway, and the reason they went out with it early was because of, what's going on right now, although the movie was still going to come out, just not for a few months. But, I think to make productions accessible is an awesome thing. And honestly, this is what I would rather see than like those like NBC, Fox live musicals where it's just like, let's get a celebrity in.
Oh my
because
God.
it's never, it's like never that good. And you're always wishing that they had just put up like the Broadway production. I remember the first time I ever saw a production like that done on TV was MTV did a whole thing around Legally Blonde like a whole bunch of years ago where they recorded the whole stage musical, they aired it on TV, they did a whole Search for Elle Woods reality show looking for the next lead actress to play Elle Woods, and that was like amazing. And I just like feel like I remember thinking that was the first time I saw something like that happen, and I wish that they would do more of that where they would just like put the production that is on stage that maybe is not out on Broadway anymore, put that up for people to watch. I would watch that on TV like 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And like Hamilton, those tickets were like $1,000 or something. That's like a deal to watch on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I've watched it like 5 times, no joke.
I still haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, you should watch.
It's so good.
I listened to the soundtrack and I was like, I am really not into this. But now that it's on Disney, it's easy. I just haven't gone around to it. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, when I first listened to the soundtrack when it first came out, like 5 years ago or whatever, I wasn't really into it either. I didn't like think that there was anything like special about it. I couldn't connect with it, but once I saw it, I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. And now, like,
so much hype. I'm like, I have to watch it. Like, I just have to know why people love it so much. But to me, I'm just like not really that interested.
Yeah. I mean, now the music is like my driving in the car, like belting.
Yeah.
You know, because there's nothing else to do. Music, you know. I've become obsessed. Yeah, I really, really liked it. I was surprised. All right, so now that we have wrapped up some of the news of this week, let's get into our main topic, mind-bending sci-fi that will mess with your head.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I think all of us really enjoy sci-fi and kind of like analyzing, you know, things in movies and television. So let's just start out like really simple. Like, why do you guys think that you're, you know, so drawn to those types of topics?
I mean, I love anything that makes me think, and anything. I love to finish a movie and then instantly like feel the need to Google it and be like, what did this mean? I need to find someone else to talk to about this. Like, I need to find a forum, and like I need to know everything. And I like go down a deep dive rabbit hole, and it's terrible, but it's just fun. It's like, it's so exciting to be so excited about a movie like that. And I feel like sci-fi really is the best genre for that.
Well, especially when you have stuff that you can interpret differently, and then you have other people like giving you an idea that you haven't thought of, and you're like, oh man, this just turned around completely what I thought about this movie or this series. And it's a never ending thing.
Yeah, when there's so much ambiguity to something where it could really go either way, and you never know, and you never get to know, and it's extremely frustrating, but it's also very rewarding.
Yeah, just like that detective board of like piecing things together is like my favorite thing about these, like, you know, very trippy stories where you're just like, what does this mean?
Yeah. Or like,
but then you should really watch Dark, because you said you haven't yet. And yes,
I want to watch it so bad.
Tell us a little bit about it, since we haven't seen it yet.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. It is in German, so you have to read a lot of subtitles, but it's definitely a show that's not afraid to like throw a lot of concepts at you and just be like, figure it out. It doesn't leave you hanging, but it doesn't dumb it down for the audience, which is why I love it so much. And there's just so much going on. There are so many storylines. There is time travel. There are time loops. There are other concepts later that are introduced, and you're like, how are we still introducing concepts? Aren't we supposed to be like heading towards the end? And it's a lot, and it's unlike any other sci-fi show out there. So I just keep yelling at people to watch it.
Well, you know, for those who haven't checked it out, or if you have checked it out and you want to dive deeper into it, Marianna has a great video that I will link to over there, that you can check out, where she dives deeper into Dark. That's definitely one I need to check out. I know that so many people recommend it. I would say one of my favorite sci-fi shows that really like makes me just like so excited, because you really get all these like crazy deep dives, and it's like, is this real? Is this not real? Is the OA? Have you guys watched that show?
I watched the first season and I was so surprised by it. I watched it knowing nothing about it, and I had no idea where it was going to take me. And it got really weird with the whole like movement dance that they were doing, and what the OA meant, like the actual OA, what it stands for.
Mm-hmm.
It once again a show where there's nothing else like it, and it's kind of a story within a story type of thing.
Yeah. Season 2 gets even crazier. Like, this is probably the only show that I will ever say I recommend actually reading the entire Wikipedia and like actually like finding out what it's about before you even watch, because the first time I watched the first season, I was like, I can't tell if this is a brilliant show or if this is a dumb show. Like, I don't know. And then I read everything again, and I rewatched it so I could watch season 2 when that came out. And I was like, this show is brilliant. It dives into like near-death experiences and other dimensions, and it just like goes to another level. And the second season, I'm so upset that it got canceled after the second season, because they started diving into like, they like broke the fourth wall, and they were like, basically they were like, yeah, this whole show is a Netflix show. You know, like this whole thing that we've experienced is a Netflix show. And I was like,
What?
like, and like there's just so many levels and it's insane. And someone needs to save the OA, you know, someone needs to save that show. But that's another one that's really fun to like dive into and explore because there's so many different pieces that you're like, and I love when you find a show that like one little thing ends up coming back later on and meaning something like completely different than you think, or it means something and you're like, that I didn't even know that was that important, you know. And I just love that kind of stuff.
I'm gonna have to check.
That's definitely a thing in Dark as well, where
I love
you
that.
you get stuff in season 1 and then it comes back and you're like, oh, that's what that was. I thought that was just a random dialogue line. Nope.
It's like, nope, that actually is like a huge plot point that's gonna mean something. But yeah, Steph, do you have any favorites that come to mind that you just love?
Oh, so I think the most recent one that I watched was Undone. I don't know if you've seen that show. It's an Amazon original. It's like a animated live action hybrid. They shot it live action on a green screen and then they added the animation on top of it. So it's really interesting, very unique look. But it's so good. I binged it in like a day. It's incredible. It stars what's her name? I wrote it down. Rosa, the chick that played Alita in Alita Battle Angel. She's the main character and she slays. I love her so much. But it's so good, and it's one of those shows that like left me so deeply in my feels and so just like, what is the meaning of life?
Yes.
Like, it just made me like, you know, it's one of those things that does that to you. And it was so good. I was hooked from the beginning because it's created by the same creators of BoJack Horseman, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. And so I was instantly like, I need to watch this show. And I can't recommend it enough. It has like time travel and a lot of sort of, you can't really trust the narrator. She's sort of an unreliable narrator. The perspective is a little bit unreliable. You never really know what's actually happening for the entire show pretty much. And it's so interesting and I cannot recommend it enough.
Yeah, I remember watching that also in a day and I loved it. And I hope it's getting a second season because it was so cool. And like the rotoscoping that they did, like that style of animation is so unique. I haven't really seen many projects like that. So I was like, yeah, this is cool.
It was very cool.
I need to watch that. I haven't seen that yet, but I've heard amazing things about it.
Yeah.
But we also had Devs earlier this year, right? That was this year. Yes.
Yeah. Did you watch that one?
Yes, that was really good. That's created by Alex Garland, who did Ex Machina and Annihilation, and it definitely lives up to those expectations that you would have for Alex Garland after that, because it's also one of those shows that's hard to talk about without spoiling it, because it's very ambiguous and you like slowly find out what these devs are doing, and it gets into kind of existential sci-fi territory a little bit. So if you haven't watched that, I would definitely very much recommend it.
I didn't know that was Alex Garland, and I love Alex Garland, so I'm gonna have to check that out.
But then you need that, definitely.
Should we talk about Alex Garland? He's like,
yes,
so
go
big
ahead.
In the mind-bending sci-fi world. Like Annihilation totally annihilated me. I mean, that movie was crazy. I loved it so much. And Ex Machina is one of my favorite movies, I think, ever. It's so good.
It's so good. And it's so rewatchable too. What I love about Ex Machina is how much every time you watch it, you kind of see it from a different perspective. Because like the first time you watch it, you see it from Caleb's perspective because you don't know what's going on. You're like, oh, AI, what's happening? Who is this lady? Where is this going? Yeah. And then the second time you watch it, you realize you're kind of in Nathan's shoes because you're like observing Caleb and you're observing the experiment, and it just changes every time. It's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love when you're watching a project where like you see something from a certain perspective, and then once you learn more, you realize that you were also seeing that same thing from like another perspective, and you can like see it in multiple ways. Mm-hmm. So deep.
So deep.
So let's keep talking about some other trippy or you know, kind of venturing into maybe some more films that kind of, you know, are pushing the envelope but maybe not getting as much recognition. I don't know if there's any other projects that you guys are loving or any creators that you're like, we need to be checking out this stuff because we're really gonna get into all that trippy mind-bending stuff with these directors and producers.
Yeah, I mean, as far as films not being recognized, I think maybe not recognized, but one film that I saw, I think a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, I can't remember. I think it was a year ago, was Upgrade, which I really, really enjoyed, but I hardly found anyone else who had seen it or knew what it was. It didn't really get a lot of marketing. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I thought it was such a brilliant sci-fi movie. I loved it so much. I've watched it so many times ever since. And I thought it was just a really fresh take on the AI, sort of in the ex machina realm of storytelling, but it just felt really unique. And it was almost a comedy, which was interesting. I don't know if either of you guys have seen this movie, but
Mm-mm.
it's.
Yeah. I had no idea you loved it. It's definitely a movie that needs more love because it's kind of like it's a lot of fun because of the situation and like the approach it takes, and the camera work is so cool in it too, that they definitely find interesting ways to like show everything that's going on and show the action. But then it's also kind of really dark in a way.
Yeah.
It's so unique. I
Yeah,
love it.
it's one of those movies that feels like it's going to be predictable, and then it completely turns itself on its head, and you have no idea. Like
Right.
it's so much fun. It's so much fun to watch. I also felt like it was very similar to Venom in a strange sort of way. It was sort of like what I wanted Venom to be, because Venom. I don't know if you saw Venom. It was an experience. I love it, but I'm aware of how bad it is, but I did enjoy it. But I felt like Upgrade was kind of the same concept of Venom without the Marvel aspect of it, and it was sort of what I felt like it should have been. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, that's kind of the issue with doing like such a famous character where you can't take risks really. Well, you can, but then you're going to have people who are not okay with that, and they're like, well, I want to see the character the way I want to see the character because
Right.
I already know how that's supposed to be. Whereas something like Upgrade, you kind of can just do whatever and
Yeah.
see what works.
Yeah.
So it has more freedom and it works out.
Right. Especially when it's in such a huge franchise like Marvel, where like they might want to use part of this later for something else. And so you can't really damage anything because it has to sustain for this forever never ending franchise.
Like we need to leave some openness there so we can insert more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I think what you guys mentioned that's really interesting is like the taking risks. Do you think that it's maybe like easier or harder to take risks in these types of films? I guess maybe it depends on if it's an established franchise already or something brand new. And do you think that there's like potential, like the opportunity to create original projects in this, kind of sci-fi space?
I think that's part of why we enjoy sci-fi as well, is that because these films aren't really expected to draw a huge audience unless you're talking about Tenet, generally it's a pretty limited audience that wants to see these films. And so there aren't as many expectations to fit certain molds, and the creators have more ability to be free, which in turn makes it more interesting for people because we see different things explored and just these what if type of movies where you take a concept and you just run with it and you see where the story takes you.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the sci-fi audience is really hungry for fresh, unique, weird, twisty, risk-taking stories, and I feel like there's a bit more wiggle room in that world as opposed to just like your standard action blockbuster or your comic book movie where it's very cookie cutter and you kind of know what you're in for, but there's a huge audience for that and people who want stuff like that, but sci-fi is a little bit more niche, and I think people want you to take a risk because otherwise it's just boring.
Definitely. Now,
I see Matt talking about Ad Astra there in the comments, and like I'm a huge fan of that movie, and it definitely did not get the attention that it deserved. And I think because people expected it to be like this fun space action movie, and then it turned out to be this meditation on search for a parent and on how we become our parents whether we want to or not, and like what other movies are doing that in a space setting. It's so unique, but then you have a limited audience, so it doesn't get the attention that it would have gotten if it was just like your regular drama about difficult relationships with your parents.
And that's probably why they packaged it and pitched it as such a like fun space movie. And then when people saw it, they were like, this isn't what I signed up for. And I feel like that happens a lot with weird sci-fi movies, is they'll put out a trailer and it'll just look like some fun space action adventure. And that's not what it is, but that's what they know will make money. I don't know.
Yeah, so kind of trying to do what they can to promote it to get as many eyes on it as possible. I mean, I think what you said is, what you guys were saying is really interesting, of just like, you know, being able to take a unique story, like you said, about like parenthood and family relationships, and giving it this like unique twist. I love being able to see stories where like there's this like relatability, but it's done in a way that's so twisty. I guess like an example that I'm thinking of right now is, I don't know if you guys have seen Relic. It's
the horror movie recently.
Yeah, so just kind of like, you know, it's a horror story, but the horror that's in it is dementia, and kind of like turning that into a physical horror. And I think that that's kind of interesting to see. You know, it seems like, oh, it's going to be this, you know, the scary monster, and it's like, no, there's like this deeper situation going on, and this deeper message. And I find that interesting.
That is my
favorite. I love that about. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that is like my favorite thing about genre films and genre television shows, and why I'm so drawn to them. And all of my favorite movies and shows are like crazy fantasy or sci-fi, or like nothing that's really in this world, because for me it's always been about like the escapism of it, but also finding a way to relate to it without really feeling like you are. Like, it kind of tricks you. It's like, oh, this is like monsters, this can't be relatable, and then you're like, wait, actually this is extremely relatable. Like, I feel like I always find a way to talk about this because it's my favorite show, but I love the show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It is my favorite show in the entire world. I've watched it 1,000 times, and what I love so much about it is, at least from the beginning, it turns the drama of being a high school student and the perils of being an awkward teenager, and it transforms them into all of these weird metaphors of monsters and demons, and it makes it easier to ingest and to relate to, because you're seeing it from this different perspective. And I don't know, it's just like my favorite thing, and I love it so much.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In the a video I had done a couple of months ago for Women's History Month, which Steph was in, I loved what you had said about Buffy in that video, which was sort of how like you're taking this stereotypical cheerleader role and like twisting it on its head, and it's not. She's not like. She's not the stereotype that you would assume is what what a cheerleader would be like in high school. She's a vampire slayer.
Yeah. What I love about the concept is, it's like you take this ditzy blonde girl out of the horror movie who's always the victim and always gets murdered. And it's like, well, what if she didn't? What if she fought back and kicked its ass? Like, that's so cool. I love that so much. And that's, I just, I love it.
Yeah, I think that's what we were saying, just about how, like, taking these like relatable stories and giving them this like twist that you're not expecting is so cool. It's just like so exciting to see, and it feels really refreshing because it is different than what you would normally see. So yeah. Let's keep going with this like genre film storyline and the kind of like how they're pushing envelopes right now. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Marianna.
I just think I think it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit, because you have films like, if we're talking about horror, you have things like Hereditary and Midsommar. For some reason, I'm only thinking of Ari Aster films right now. But films that are so different from what we're used to seeing in horror, at least in like the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s. And it's like a whole new era of horror. And we have two amazing lead performances that did not get recognized or even nominated because the Academy likes to ignore that. However, does this lack of expectation for horror give it that opportunity to push the envelope? Because they don't have to worry about awards and they're just doing their thing and doing crazy stuff on screen, and it's violent and dark and goes somewhere towards the end where you don't expect.
That's a great point. I think you're right. There, these films I feel like are getting critical acclaim, but not getting like awards. And it's like, one, that's crazy, but also two, that kind of gives you the opportunity to do whatever you want. And I think going off of what you're saying, that makes me think of like the Jordan Peele horror movies, like Get Out and Us. Like,
right.
I feel like Lupita Nyong'o, how did she not get nominated for awards for Us? I personally love that movie, and I think that's a great example also of like, you know, again, we're seeing like these social issues being discussed in like these like very like metaphorical ways, and like in these ways where you like have to go back and rewatch the film and you're like, oh my gosh, what? That's what that meant. And just to see that, like, you know, now there's like this representation that's coming forward of like seeing Black creators and Black actors in horror and in sci-fi in ways that like we haven't seen before. I think that stereotypically people of color have, you know, either been the first people killed in these movies or have been, you know, not targeted, in that people just don't think that like people of color are watching these types of movies, and clearly that's not true. And I think we're seeing that already with Lovecraft Country that is coming out this Sunday. That, you know,
I'm so excited to watch that. That looks so cool.
I saw the first few episodes, and I think just to see like that the characters themselves are horror and sci-fi fans, and that like they're kind of getting brought into these crazy situations is something that we just don't see. And the same thing with Us and Get Out, where like we're seeing we're finally starting to see people of color in these spaces as well. And I think that that's awesome. And I think, you know, it just allows people to push the envelope even more in the types of like stories we're telling, whether it's you know, issue based or you know, just giving relatable situations these unique twists.
But also, I love how almost controversial these movies are. Like, people either love them or hate them. And I feel like that in itself speaks to how powerful the stories are. Because nobody comes out of Us and they're like, this is okay.
Yeah, you have strong opinions.
Like, very strong opinions. And that's what art is supposed to do. Like, you're supposed to have a strong reaction to it. And same with Hereditary. I have people on commenting in my videos, they're like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen, it was ridiculous. And then other people are like, this is a masterpiece. I'm on that side of things. Yeah. But nobody came out of Hereditary thinking like, it's all right.
Right.
Not much happened, you know.
Casual. Yeah, no, I feel like horror fans are just like such a different breed of person, and horror creators and just the genre. It's just so much more, I don't know. It's so much more heavy, and I feel like it's an interesting genre because everyone loves at least one sci-fi movie. Everyone loves at least one action movie, but not everyone loves horror. It's very like you either love it or you hate it, and people are passionate as hell about it. And it's, I don't know. I just think horror fans are so interesting because they're always so passionate about the genre and so passionate about these movies, which is why it's such a black and white response, because everyone goes into it with these expectations. And yeah, I think it's a weird, interesting fan base.
Absolutely. And you know, it is interesting because I think that there are sort of you know, like you said, these are categories of film that, you know, are very divisive. Like some people either love them or hate them. And I think sometimes people also think only certain people like these types of films, you know, like women don't like them or people of color wouldn't like them. And I feel like now we're starting to see people being more aware that there are a lot of different types of people that enjoy these projects, women, people of color. And I think the more that we're seeing diverse stories being told, the more we're getting to see more people becoming fans of horror and sci-fi as well. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I mean, I think with things like Get Out and Hereditary, like those were really big, like pretty much like blockbuster movies, which doesn't happen that much for a horror, at least one that's like that good, like an actual good horror that isn't just like a goofy slasher. I feel like a lot of the times the really, really good horror is kind of niche and it's just for like that one category of horror fans. Whereas I feel like Jordan Peele really brought in this audience of his fans and no one really expected it to come from him. So everyone was curious about it and they're like, wow, I need to see this just to see what he can do. And people were just blown away. And I feel like it exposed a lot of people to the genre. And same with Hereditary and Midsommar, and Ari Aster's just beautiful, amazing, brilliant mind has just brought these amazing movies to people who maybe wouldn't normally look for it. So I feel like things are happening.
It's true because most of the time when I talk to people who don't like horror, they think of your typical slasher, like the mainstream, like same type of slasher you would think of from, you know, the 80s and 90s. But then you introduce them to something like Hereditary and they're like, oh, I didn't realize that, you know, we could have horror movies like that actually address deeper themes and they're not just like a masked dude chasing around a girl and that's like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's nice to see that these newer voices are just bringing more people to the community and like showing them that horror can be many different things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Great. Okay, so I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts you want to add before we start wrapping up this section.
I think I've said all I need to say.
We've said it
Yeah.
all. We've said it all. Okay, so I'm going to start wrapping up and then we're going to get into some questions at the end. So thank you guys so much for joining me. You'll be able to find all the information and links to Pop Culture Planet and our guests below. But if you want to follow Steph and Marianna, do you guys want to share where they can find you?
Sure. You can check me out on my channel, Aggressive Comics, or you can follow me on social media at Steph Cozza on everything.
I am pretty much Impression Blend on anything. At any social media, if it's not Impression Blend, then it's not me.
Okay, so if you guys are interested in following the podcast, you can follow me pretty much everywhere at Kmaldo or the show at Pop Culture Planet Podcast on Instagram. You can catch new episodes every Thursday at 6:30 p.m. EST. And if you watch the live video version of Pop Culture Planet on my channel, youtube.com/Kmaldo, you'll be able to join us live in on the conversation in real time and stick around at the end for a Q&A that's not in the audio podcast. Episodes are also available on all of your favorite podcast listening platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. And if you enjoyed the episodes, consider subscribing so you know when a new one's posted, rate and review, and share with your fellow pop culture lovers. Thanks for listening. It's been a blast. Talk to you next week. All right. So we're going to get into some questions and some comments that have come in. So let's go through. So if you have any questions or comments that you want to add, feel free to throw them in now and we will get to them. So we'll go back a bit. We have Movie Files here, excited for episode 2 with some awesome guests. Colin Williams saying, looking forward to this. Me too. We were a little bit nervous, but
I'm so sweaty.
Right. We're sweating.
We're just
powering
through.
Zach Pajic saying, popcorn and soda at the ready. Thank you 3 in advance for this. We know it's going to be awesome. Thank you for believing in us.
Yes.
Okay, let me go down a little bit more. We have a comment from Matt talking about Steph's awesome origins.
Thank you. You're like a superhero. An origin story.
Yes. Matt also saying he's very impressed by the opera singing.
It's impressive.
Yes.
I'm gonna need to hear it though. Let's go.
Yes. No, I'm just kidding.
Right
We'd be
now.
like, oh,
Right now, go.
We have a comment from James, also very impressed by the classically trained. Let's see what else. This is a comment from Lindsay about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, saying they had some really good dramatic moments in the original show, but what was so great about it was that it mixed the funny with the sentimental, so she's on the fence about this new reboot as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that is a good point.
The balance of comedy and drama made it sort of easier to process the drama, and they could go a little bit heavier because of the comedic element. Mm-hmm. Anyway, yeah, you can keep going. But yes, good point.
We got a comment from Steffi, who was on the first episode of Pop Culture Planet last week, who says that she absolutely agrees with Steph. I feel like they're kind of following what they did with Boomerang. This was a 90s rom-com, and now BET has a show very different tonally, though. So also talking about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Yes, agreed.
Let's see. Going back to our chat about Hamilton, Matt says, #Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson is God. Stevie Diggs is great.
I really need to see this.
We also have, you do. Honestly, I really enjoyed it so much that I bought a Hamilton book that explains how they put the musical together and talks about all the references. And honestly, that's another project that I really love, just because there's so many things you can deep dive into. There's all these hip hop references and even certain lines, or the way that Lin-Manuel Miranda says a specific line in a song. He was trying to sound like Ja Rule, because the song is supposed to be one of those back and forth R&B guy and girl songs where it's an Ashanti and a Ja Rule. That was the inspiration for creating a song it was Helpless. And it's just so interesting. I love finding out these little details.
I really do need to see it. I might make a video about it since I'm so conflicted about it. I don't know.
You should. You should.
We're peer pressuring you into it.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
I will say.
I didn't think I was going to enjoy it either, because I'm not a fan of rap. And so I heard that that's the kind of musical that it was. And I was like, oh, great. I'm not going to like it, but I guess I'm going to watch it. And then I was shocked by how much I loved it, because it's so much fun and it's so creative, and the music and the lyrics are just so powerful. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even there's little details of the way that someone says something, or the way that they repeat certain motifs, and they say certain phrases in multiple ways, that it means one thing at the beginning of the show and it means something else in the middle of the show and it means something else at the end, or they use certain lyrics to foreshadow things. I should do a video on all these little things, but it's just too much. Yeah, it's there's too much to talk about that I'm I feel overwhelmed just thinking about it. But yeah, I really liked it. I will say the first act I like better than the second act. I feel like it has the better songs, but I'll just listen to the first act.
I'm the other way around. I like the second act better. Yeah.
I feel like the first act, I'm I'll just listen to that on repeat, and then I'll that's it. I don't need to keep going.
I mean, they're both great, but
yeah,
if we're picking.
Yeah, if we're picking acts. Too funny. We also have a comment from Marcia, who says we should do a collab. She is another content creator who does a lot of TV and film content. She's from Mexico.
Yes.
Let's see. Matt says, what would you say is your favorite movie musical? That's asking me to choose a child. Oh my gosh. My favorite movie musical. Do you guys have any favorite movie musicals?
Oh, brother.
La La Land?
that counts.
No, I'm thinking of La La Land. I also thought of Sweeney Todd.
Oh my gosh.
I think I'd have to see
Sweeney Todd.
So good. It's also my favorite Broadway show that I've ever seen is Sweeney Todd.
Yes, I love Sweeney Todd. I actually don't love the musical movie that as much as the musical itself.
Oh yeah, the musical itself is way better. But
yeah,
if I had to pick a movie musical,
yeah.
I think I would pick Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, it's just sometimes my problem with movie musicals sometimes is my same problem that I have with the Fox NBC musicals, is that sometimes I just feel the people they pick are not necessarily the best options for a musical. So like,
They
you
pick
know,
the star power to be the vehicle.
exactly. When I really just want the singing power, you know. So like, you know, Sweeney Todd, like Johnny Depp's not a singer.
No.
No. And even
I think it kind of works in that because like the music itself is so like different and kind of weird, and I'm looking for the right word and I'm not finding it, but I would usually, because I am, I guess, in the minority because I did not enjoy the Les Miserables film, even though I absolutely love the musical, but when they did the film musical, it was painful to listen to in so many ways, except for a few people who are actual Broadway performers.
yes, exactly.
So that's usually my complaint with movie musicals, but it didn't bother me as much in Sweeney Todd because I think it kind of worked with the vibe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's kind of gritty, and it's a lot of like half spoken, half sung.
Right, yeah.
So,
That's true.
Kind
I guess there were maybe some moments that I wanted like a more powerful, like angry singing Sweeney, and I know I got that when I saw it on Broadway, but I didn't get that from Johnny Depp. Like I remember there's a part where he's like, "My friend," and I was waiting for like that moment, and I was like, I'm not getting it.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, it didn't happen how I wanted. But you know, so honestly, I don't know if I have a favorite movie musical, but my favorite musical is Aida because I really love like contemporary like R&B style musicals. And my favorite musical that I saw on Broadway that technically is streaming is Shrek the Musical. I like cried watching Shrek the Musical. It's really good. There's some really heartfelt songs. You should check it out. It's on Netflix if you haven't seen it.
I actually am a huge fan of Shrek. Like not even ironically, I just really love Shrek.
It's a great story.
You should check out the musical.
Yeah.
Also, another weird musical that I thought was going to be really bad that I actually kind of loved was the SpongeBob musical.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
It was surprisingly fantastic. It was really, really fun.
And also, so I saw it on Broadway, and then I recently rewatched it during the quarantine because they had recorded it and it was on like streaming or something. And I was like, wow, this is so relevant right now because they're like in the middle of an end of the world situation. And I was like, why is this so real?
Never thought I could relate to SpongeBob so much.
Yeah. Yeah, but they do a good job with that one also of just like keeping those like iconic SpongeBob moments and like bringing them to the stage. I was like, this is good.
Yeah, that was one of those like I went just like to get drunk and have fun, and I ended up loving the shit out of it.
Yeah, they have a lot of good music too from like different musicians. Like I think right, Panic at the Disco did a song.
Yeah, there's a lot of collaborative efforts went into that.
Yeah. And Marcia says, I would probably watch Phantom of the Opera on Netflix, to be honest, but it's not the same, of course. So she was talking about when we were discussing musicals going to Netflix and stuff. She
that
also
was interesting because it's like everyone knows it already, so it's not like it's too, I don't know, spoilery, if that makes any sense. Like,
yeah, that's once again like a musical with a huge existing fan base, and it's not exactly, even if you premiered it with a completely new cast, it's still something that is not like new to people.
No, I feel like it's an iconic story that like purposed in, you know, in retellings and stuff. I feel like there was like an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode that was sort of Phantom of the Opera inspired, like a guy in a basement, or of a school or something.
Do you guys remember that Disney Channel movie that was a spin-off of Phantom of the Opera? It was like Ghost of the Omniplex or something.
Oh, that's what that. Oh yeah, the something Megaplex.
It was it was like they took the words from the title and just used synonyms for the new title.
Phantom of the Megaplex.
From the Megaplex.
Yes.
And I would love to rewatch all those old Disney Channel movies and make a video about it.
That's a great idea. If you need a partner. That sounds fun. Okay. Marcia also says Grease was good though. I have to say, I'm not a fan of Grease. I don't really like Grease.
You know, I used to love Grease, and then as I watched it, like as an adult, I was like, this is a little fucked up.
That's how I felt my whole life. Like, I don't get why people like this story. I think it's messed up.
Like, completely changes herself for a man. Like, I don't know if I'm with you, girl. Like, what are you doing?
I totally agree with that. That's how I always felt, and I was like, I don't get why people love this.
But the music is really fun, so I'll give them that. It's fun.
I agree.
We got another question. What is your favorite sci-fi film? What are you guys' favorite sci-fi films?
We have to pick one?
Just
Give
one?
us a whole array.
Oh God. I really like Blade Runner.
Ooh.
I don't know. That might be my favorite. I wrote some down.
Well, we all know my favorite sci-fi film is Arrival, so.
Yes. I actually did not really like Arrival.
Ooh.
Well, we can be friends now,
I
obviously.
know. I was afraid to tell you that, actually. I was like, maybe I'll just leave it to her. But I feel like I need to see it again because I don't know.
Yeah,
After
and we
hearing
need
so
to talk.
Yeah. So I'll get back to you. But when I first saw it, I was a little underwhelmed. I don't know.
Okay.
I've created some tension.
You're like, we need to cut. No. I feel like I'm a little bit more of a TV person. So I love films, but I feel like I love like a lot of sci-fi like shows. So a couple of my favorites are Dollhouse. I don't know if anyone
Oh my
has
God. I love Dollhouse so much. I was going to talk about that and I forgot.
It's so good. She's like Eliza Dushku is my queen. I feel like I've been talking about her a lot this week, and I just have been thinking like I really want to like rewatch Dollhouse again.
Same. I feel like she's a really underappreciated actress. Like she's phenomenal, especially in Dollhouse. Oh, it's
yes. So for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's so hard to explain too. I feel like
it is.
But it's like these people are taken and put into this place where they get inserted with different personalities each episode, and they like kind of go on these different missions, but they're really being like taken advantage of. So like, one mission she might be like a pop star trying like, but really undercover to save like the lead singer of the group. Or another episode she's like infiltrating a cult as like a blind woman. And so I just feel like it's such a cool show because she gets to play so many different roles in one project. I'm like, this is awesome.
And it really explores like the meaning of your identity and like who you are as a person. And like every episode she's like wiped, like her memory is wiped and she becomes someone else. But as the plot progresses, she starts to remember things and realize that she's not any of these people. And it's just really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. I love that show. And also the OA, which I already talked about, is another one that I really love. Yeah. Oh, now I just want to rewatch Dollhouse right now.
Speaking of Dollhouse and her playing so many different roles, have either of you seen Orphan Black?
I have not. Well, I think maybe the first episode when it first originally came out, but
it's sort of similar. Well, it's not that similar to Dollhouse, but it's similar in the fact that Tatiana Maslany plays like 10 different roles because it's about clones and she plays all of them and it's phenomenal. She's brilliant and it's also a really, really good story. I highly recommend it.
I remember really.
Oh, go ahead.
I remember really loving season 1 of that because it was awesome. I loved it. And then I watched season 2 and I was kind of like, I don't know, because they just kept introducing more and more clones.
Yeah, it gets
more clones
overwhelming by the end.
Clones?
I got overwhelmed by clones, but I loved the idea, and obviously her performances are just insane. And like did she ever get nominated for that? Because I remember that was a big thing where she wasn't nominated for the longest time.
I know she won a few smaller awards, but I don't know if she ever got like huge recognition, which is crazy because she was phenomenal.
Yeah, because
like, come on.
Yeah, so I just love seeing like these badass chicks in these like sci-fi stories. It's so like I just always think of Eliza Dushku as this like tough, badass, awesome lady.
Hell yeah.
So let's keep going. This was also in reference to us talking about like sci-fi, being able to dive deeper into stuff. Robin talks about Palm Springs, which I know, Steph, you had recently done a whole explainer video on.
Yes. Hi, Robin. So Palm Springs, I actually watched it because Marianna reviewed it and it sounded amazing. And I was like, I need to see this movie. And it was so good. This was one of those movies that sent me down a deep, deep rabbit hole. And it's just one of those movies that makes you think and theorize so much because it's a little bit ambiguous, especially the ending is kind of fun. And I think it's the best movie I've seen this year. Not that there's been that much this year, but I think it's the best that I've seen this year. And
Mhm.
it was just so much fun and such a refreshing story that I didn't expect it to be. And it was awesome. I don't know, Mariana, if you want to add to that since you reviewed it too.
Yeah, like it was just so unexpectedly good, and I was super skeptical going into that because I'm not a big fan of Adam Sandberg.
Yeah, I'm not
Andy
really.
Samberg. What happened to my brain just now? Andy Samberg.
We're all
Not a
losing
huge
it.
fan. Can't even remember his name. So I was like, people are talking about this movie. It's free on Hulu. I guess I'll watch it. And then it was just so much fun. But they did the time loop concept in such a cool way that was kind of a rom-com, kind of like a nihilism versus no, our life has meaning story. It was great. I did not expect it to be as good as it was, and it's definitely one of the best movies of 2020 so far. It's definitely one of my favorites as well. I would
Yeah,
highly recommend it.
I love how it takes a concept that we know, the rom com, the Groundhog's Day situation, but like it feels like it does something different. Which I
Yeah,
think, like,
Yeah.
it's so easy for those groundhog type of films and shows to just like feel so repetitive because it's a repetitive situation. But I feel like they even did like little things in there that it's like, duh, why not like learn all about like time, space, quantum physics if you have all the time in the world and try to figure out how to get out of there, like just things that like it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, maybe an everyday person would try to do that to get out of this situation, which you never really see people try to do. So yeah, there was a lot of really great performances in there as well. I think
Mhm.
I thought Andy Samberg was very charming,
Yeah. Yeah, he
and the two of them
surprised me.
have great chemistry in there.
Mhm.
Let's see what else. This is, I believe, about your dark review, Mariana. Marcia says that she watched it and she loved it.
thank you.
Matt saying he has to check out Devs now because he loved Annihilation and he adores Ex
Yes,
Machina with all his heart. And
Des
Movie
is so good.
Files, yeah, Movie Files also says Devs is one of his favorite movies this year behind Dark Season 3. So I definitely need to check these out.
Yeah,
This is what I
same.
need to
I'm like,
spend time
what have I been
doing.
doing with my life? I need to watch these shows right now.
hmm And Matt
They're
says it
really
all.
good.
Yeah, and Matt says it also has a very clever screenplay, since it allows the audience to participate by thinking about what you're watching on screen. Interesting.
That is definitely a thing with devs where kind of you're given clues and it takes a while to get a confirmation of what's going on. So it's up to your interpretation for so long, and the lead character is trying to figure it out too. So
That's fun. I
it's
love
nice.
that.
Yeah.
Cool.
I have to watch
Yes.
this.
Yes. And then Matt also says Blue Ruin needs more attention. I know Mariana loves it. So what is
Have
Blue
you
Ruin?
have you guys seen Green Room?
No.
No.
Okay, so Blue Ruin is this it's a revenge film essentially. It's a very indie revenge film, and it's very grounded, um about a very kind of, it's not like a glamorous revenge movie, if you know what I mean. And a lot of it has to do with the toll that revenge takes on us and whether or not it's actually satisfying.
That's cool. That's interesting.
Hmm.
I've
It's
heard
kind of
of
like
that.
it's a revenge thriller,
Okay.
if you're into that. But yes,
Cool.
it's really good and it's really beautifully shot.
I love a
Sounds
good
good.
revenge flick.
Yes. Marcia also says, "What do we think about Jared Leto being Morbius? Any thoughts?"
I don't think much about Jared Leto. I just, I have a weird relationship with him because I used to be obsessed with him because I loved his music. And as like an angsty teen, he was everything to me. And then he started acting, and like, for the exception of Mr. Nobody, which is a mind-bending sci-fi that I just thought of and I totally forgot about until this moment. Very good. He's really good in that. But I don't know. He's just like, I just don't like him as a person.
My cat decided to make an appearance.
Aw. What's your cat's
Cute.
name?
Her name's Aria.
Oh, yeah. Aw. She's so cute.
She just settled on my lap because that's apparently what we're doing now. I love Mr. Nobody. I feel like you're like the first person I've talked to who actually seen that movie.
And no one ever knows what it is. I always talk about it and they're like, huh?
I
It's
gotta
so
check
Yeah,
it out.
nobody knows about that movie.
Yeah.
Mr.
Oh, I'm so glad you know
Nobody.
about it. It's
Okay.
really good. I don't even want to
It's
tell you
about the
anything.
choices we make, let's
Ooh.
say.
Yes.
Yes,
Ooh.
and how that affects our future, or if that affects our future.
Interesting.
It's a very unique story. I can't think of anything else quite like it. But
It's super trippy. Like it's not. It's definitely like you got to go with it. It's not very. It's pretty unusual. It has its own unique kind of tone and mood.
Yes. I don't think it will leave you feeling particularly satisfied. Maybe after a few days you'll feel satisfied, but I feel like the initial ending, it's one of those movies that leaves you thinking quietly to yourself.
Okay.
As it should.
Yes. It should.
It's
That
about the
sounds
last mortal on Earth because they've
Ooh.
like invented immortality, and this dude is the last person who is immortal. And he's really, really old, and he's like thinking about his life.
Wow.
And that's
Alright.
in the beginning, and then you like find out what led to that. So
Interesting. You guys got me sold. I have to check it out.
I think it's on Netflix. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure.
Cool. Let's see. We got another comment from Matt saying Brigsby Bear also needs more love too, and that Ad Astra should have been more recognized. So we talked about those a little bit. But have you guys checked out Brigsby Bear? I don't know that one.
yes. Why have I seen all these movies?
I know. We're all like, no, and every time you're like, yeah.
That one's very indie, and I don't think a lot of people even know it exists. Brigsby Bear, no, I don't want to spoil that. You would just have to go and watch it because it kind of turns around because you think it's one thing, and then like halfway through the movie, you're like, oh, that's a completely different situation. But a lot of it has to do with like nostalgia and following your passion,
Okay.
but also like heavy nostalgia, and yeah.
Cool. We also got another recommendation, Space Pirates. I don't know if any of you have checked out that movie. I don't know that one.
Even I haven't seen that.
I'm intrigued.
You got us. You tricked us. We don't know this one. Matt also says Robert Eggers, I think, is up there with Ari Aster and Jordan Peele as one of the best horror directors of our time. What do you guys think? Favorite horror directors?
I'm a huge fan of The Witch, so I definitely agree. Like, The Witch is definitely one of my favorite horror films, and I love how much it talks about. It's a very subversive horror film because it was one of those that was misadvertised as like this spooky witch in the woods situation, and really it's about this family that is super religious and struggling but have a complete lack of faith in each other and don't trust each other. So yeah,
sounds interesting.
and there's a evil goat. You can't go wrong with that.
Too funny. Lindsay says that she's very excited for Lovecraft Country. I'm gonna tell you, it's wild. It's definitely a wild ride. And then Matt says he's definitely on the masterpiece side when it comes to Hereditary. And that A24 in general has just put out some great horror films that are really original and well crafted. I would agree.
Yeah,
they've been putting out a lot of great films. Let's see. Zach says a top 5 horror for me is Scream, which has its self-awareness among characters and storytelling. Interestingly, lots of my non-horror loving friends do love that one. I feel like that's a classic, right?
Yeah, that's like a
for sure. Yeah,
horror, but it's so much fun.
Yeah. And Robin is like co-signing. Yes, Scream is my all-time favorite horror movie. Do you guys have an all-time favorite horror movie?
Probably The Shining.
The Shining, yes.
Love The Shining.
I do love Scream a lot and The Shining, but maybe Alien, because it combines
Ooh.
the two beautiful genres of sci-fi and horror.
Yes. I love like a horror thriller, so I'm gonna go with. I really liked Ready or Not. I feel like that's one of my like.
I loved Ready or Not. That was
Yeah.
So much fun.
Right, it's so underappreciated. I feel like last year.
No, you're right. It is. That was so much fun. I completely forgot about that. I think I've watched it like 5 times since it came out. It's like one of those movies that like I just put on when I just like need something mindless because it's just fun. And I enjoyed it way more than I thought that I would.
Yeah.
My cat is back. Sorry.
And Samara Weaving is just like incredible.
She was so good. I'm excited to see her in the new Bill and Ted movie.
Yeah. Wait, who was she in that?
She is Bill's daughter, or Ted's daughter, one of their daughters.
That's gonna be funny. Yeah,
I love her. She's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Matt also says that for a horror film recommendation, he recommends the original Suspiria from 1977.
That's such an incredible film.
So I haven't seen that actually. I
highly recommend it if you're a horror fan. It's one of the best, I think. Iconic. The remake was pretty good too, but the original is like mind-blowing.
I know it has that like iconic like wall or ceiling, right? I know they referenced it in like Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. That's like my only like connection to Suspiria.
I started watching it at some point and I got distracted, so I don't know.
You definitely need to like pay attention and focus because it's a little bit trippy.
Yeah.
But it's a good time. I actually watched it in film school. I took a horror class, which was the best class I've ever taken. And it was very fun. And we watched some really weird movies. But that's one of the ones we watched. And it was so much fun.
Nice. That must have been a really cool class.
It was. It was so much fun. I learned about so many weird movies that I don't think I ever would have found otherwise. Because my professor was very like really into horror and like really into the weird niche stories. And it was a really interesting experience for sure.
That's the kind of class I would want to take.
Right?
Yeah.
Get into all those like crazy deep dives into like all the underrated stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
We got another comment from Steffi who says, what are some of your favorite classic horror movies and some of your favorite modern day horror movies? I mean, modern day, I really like Us. I really liked that movie.
I liked Us.
Us was great. I already talked about The Witch and Hereditary, and those are definitely big favorites. And I'm looking back because there's a bunch of horror movies behind me. But there's also a ton of like great foreign horror movies. Because there's the whole French New Extremity movement, and they do absolutely crazy stuff, and they're definitely love it or hate it. And
Japanese horror is like
and Korean horror too.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of good horror going around right now. For classics, I mean, you can't go wrong with The Shining. Even though some people say it's not horror, I think it's totally horror. I'm also a big fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I was very surprised by that film because I thought I was going to be like, oh God, a 70s film. Like that's going to be super cheesy. But something about it is just, it's so terrifying and so unique that I'm a big fan of it.
I love that one. I love slashers. Like I'm like weird because slashers sometimes have like no context and it's literally just like a fun slasher, but sometimes that's what you need. And I love those movies. Like I love the Jason movies, the Friday the 13th movies, even though most of them are trash, like hot garbage.
Sometimes
but
it's not trash.
I just love them so much. I love the character. I love his like really upsetting backstory. I really this is like embarrassing, but I think my favorite classic horror movie in the like slasher realm is Freddy vs. Jason. It's so bad in the best way, and I love it so much. But it's horrible. It's absolutely horrendous. But it's so much fun. It's really cheesy.
Well, they're meant to be entertaining, so Yeah.
Sometimes you just want some cheese,
I love that slasher cheese.
Steffi also says, great show, ladies. As someone who isn't deep in the sci-fi horror genre, I learned a lot from listening to your conversation. Thank you, Steffi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Lindsay also says, since this is sci-fi related, what sci-fi concept is the most difficult to wrap your head around?
Interesting question.
Yeah.
I would definitely say time travel, because time travel is so difficult to do properly, where you're like not questioning when you're not questioning how does that all come together, well, doesn't that affect this, and just when you get into people traveling back in time trying to fix things, like that's where it gets really complicated and it's super hard to do.
And it's so hard to write because it's incredibly difficult to avoid like plot holes, because if this thing happens, that affects this thing and this thing. And I feel like almost every time travel movie has at least one plot hole because it's like almost impossible to avoid. But I love time travel. It's like my favorite kind of story.
Yeah.
All of my favorite stories have something to do with time travel. It's just so much fun.
Yeah, I love seeing stories like Back to the Future is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I think that they do such a good job with that one of just like, you know, kind of it's so formulaic the way that they repeat the story in all three movies, but like it's just done so well. Like it doesn't feel like, oh, we've seen this already. It feels like we have like a method, you know, and like the way that they time travel and everything just feels so fun.
I love Back to the Future so much.
Yes. Rastic Reviews says you guys all rock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Movie File says, thoughts on the term subgenre elevated horror, and which do you prefer, elevated horror or traditional jump scares approach to the horror genre? Interesting.
I feel like it depends.
Yeah.
Like you can make the traditional jump scare thing work, but a lot of the time it doesn't work. It's just a matter of how you approach it, I think.
Well, the problem is when it's just like a bird. It's not an actual scare. It's just like loud.
It needs to be like a motivated moment. Like there has to be a reason for this jump scare. And they shouldn't be every 5 minutes.
Well, and it should be an actual scare and not just a loud, you know, fake out. Yeah. But interesting, you know, elevated horror. It's kind of funny because it immediately puts down horror as this like, well, horror is a shitty genre, you know? And then there's elevated horror, and that's how people generally think about horror, that's not a genre that produces good movies. And like, I'm not a big fan of that separation, because I feel like horror is horror and it can be many different things, just like drama movies can be many different things, and there are good ones and bad ones.
Yeah.
So I
feel like a lot of people look at horror as like this lesser genre sometimes, depending on the kind of horror that it is. And a lot of people look at it as sort of like an experience more than a movie, like sort of like an adrenaline rush, scary experience. And they don't look at anything under the surface level of just like the bloody, gory, scary thing. And a lot of the times it's so much.
It can be that, yeah.
It can be that. And I'm okay with it. But a lot of the times it's a lot more than that. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you guys make a lot of great points. I think like there's way more to every genre than just like the, you know, like horror, like the jump scares or things like that. Like I think you can really dive deep into a lot of different genres. But I will say, like in terms of traditional jump scares or kind of like those spooky moments, a project that I really love is The Haunting of Hill House, and how they sort of like hide like the little ghosts and things, and you know, if you're really paying attention, like you get freaked out, or they have these like scares that you're just like not expecting. The whole oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm just really excited.
No, it's a great project.
I love those little moments because they're almost like silent jump scares. Like they make you jump, but like nothing actually happens. It's just like the second that you notice them, you're like instantly creeped out. And then once you notice one, you see all of them everywhere, and it's just so chilling. I love it.
Oh, it was.
And then it transfers to your place, and you're like looking around in the corners of your house, and you're like, are there things that I'm just not noticing?
Yeah, definitely like makes you, you know, you kind of take that with you after watching the project. It's like, oh my god. And that, what was it, the 5th episode with Nell's whole story.
Oh my god, Neal's story blew my mind.
I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
I already loved the show, and then that happened, and I was like, everyone needs to watch this show. Stop what you're doing. This is so good.
Yeah. I feel like that in itself is like the epitome of like the type of stories that I love, where you're just like shook, like while you're watching it. You're like, I can't believe this is happening. This is so good. Yeah. I'm really excited for the second season that they're going to do. Inspired by, right, the turning of the shrew, the turning of the shrew.
The turn of the screw, yeah.
Turn of the screw. I'm combining like Shakespeare.
Yes.
I'm like, what? Yeah, with that same actress, I think is going to be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, a little bit American Horror Story-esque, where they're taking some of the actors and using them for different roles in a new project. But yes, I think Michael Flanagan, right? That's his name, Michael Flanagan.
Yeah,
is so talented. That even that those long shots that they did in like I think the later half of the season, it's like incredible.
Yeah, really impressive.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see what else. Another question from Movie Files. Are you excited for the new HBO horror sci-fi Lovecraft Country?
Confirmed.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's going to be really cool.
A lot of excitement for that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And then another one for Marianna. Speaking of dark, are you excited for Baron Bo Odar and Jean Frias next season, 1899? I'm sorry if I said that completely wrong.
Nailed it.
Yeah, I have no idea how to pronounce these names. I mean, I'm excited for anything that they do next, because I love the idea that they worked on every episode, which happens so rarely. It's 3 seasons of a show, and I think, and one of them directed every single episode, and the other one co-wrote every single episode. So there's this unified vision, and if they bring that to their next series, like, that'll be great, because it definitely pays off to have people work on the whole thing versus just getting it started and then handing it off to someone else.
Yeah, you get that whole vision, that same vision going through the whole thing. That's awesome. Got another comment from Robin. Steph, we should watch Hamilton together. I haven't seen it there, so basically you gotta have a movie night.
Let's do this. Let's go.
You're doing it.
No choice now.
And Steffi says, first act of Hamilton is super fun and entertaining. Second act, I cry.
But that makes sense why I like the second more than
I love a good cry. I love anything that makes me cry. I'm a little bit of a masochist, but maybe I'll like it.
Too funny. We've got, let's see what other comments we have. A lot of great comments.
Yeah, a lot of comments.
Oh,
I'm excited.
Zach says, on the topic of Jared Leto, the only thing that would have made Blade Runner 2049 better is if the original plan to have David Bowie play his part were to happen. R.I.P. Goblin King.
Yes.
Labyrinth.
Yes.
100%. Yes.
James says, I'm so excited for Scream 5.
Yeah.
Are you guys excited for a new Scream?
We'll see. No comment just yet.
No comment.
I'm not a huge fan of like franchises that go on and on and on. So if it's a great film, then I'm excited, but I don't have really high hopes for installment number 5 to blow my mind.
Yeah, it feels a little bit unnecessary, a little bit gratuitous.
Yeah, sometimes it's like you get a good idea and they're like, let's do 500 movies. And you're like,
yeah.
After a while, like you start losing ideas.
Right.
And James also says, I highly recommend Slasher on Netflix. Really good storytelling and characters, which is super rare for horror TV.
I've heard of that, but I've never checked it out.
Me neither.
I've heard some conflicting feedback about it. Some people love it. Some people think it's super cheesy and lame. So definitely.
Well, I love my cheesy slashers, so maybe I like it.
I know. I think it's supposed to kind of do callbacks to slasher classics. So that could be interesting, playing on that nostalgia.
Yeah, totally. This is related to our talking about time travel, but James says, I'm super tired of the Umbrella Academy because of all the timeline flipping. I just feel like they keep looping. Did you guys watch Umbrella Academy?
Yes, that's the next video I need to make. I need to review that because I just finished watching it and I loved it. I really love this show. And I do feel like after a while the time traveling might get a little bit like I might get a little bit fatigued from it just because season 1 and season 2 sort of have the same plot more or less.
Yeah.
Like different things happen, but it's the same like premise of like we need to stop the apocalypse from happening and use time travel. And like after a while, I'm like, well, what are they gonna do next? But right
True.
now, I'm really into it, and I have no problem with it at all.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Back to the Future in that way, where it's like repeating the same formula, but like different things happen inside, which like right now I'm okay with it. I don't know if they're going to do that in season 3 as well, but you know, hopefully that now we're going to move into more of the what's going on with the other, what is it, like 36 people that have superpowers. That's what I'm waiting for. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, the ending was really, I don't know if we're ready to talk about that because spoilers, and it's pretty new, so I don't want to like, give it away to anyone who hasn't watched it yet, but the ending left me feeling some type of way.
Yeah.
That's all I will say.
I haven't seen any of it, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well,
it's very good. I recommend
it. Yeah. It's season 2, I think they really like upped the ante. Like I think they brought it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those time travel stories that adds a nice whimsical element to it, and it's just really fun.
Yeah, I love a whimsical. I love like when it's like superheroes that like are flawed and like goofy, and I love those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
Mock the Magic Man says the time travel stuff in the Umbrella Academy is insane, and Movie File says season 2 was great. Robin also says that she really liked season 2 of Umbrella Academy. Matt says, are any of you going to watch the new Nurse Ratched series coming to Netflix?
Yes.
Yes.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes. I'm so excited. It looks amazing.
Yes. James also can't wait for Nurse Ratched. So are you guys like Sarah Paulson fans, or are you guys Ryan Murphy fans, or it's just like the horror? You're like, yes.
Both.
The Ryan Murphy part is the only thing that makes me nervous about that because I just finished watching Hollywood and I'm like, oh no.
He's like extremely hit or miss. Like
yes.
I love him. I adore him. And then other times I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So it could go either way, but I love Sarah Paulson. I think she's fantastic. And just based on the little bit that I've seen from her, like she brought it and I am ready.
Yeah, she's great. Sure. I feel like Ryan Murphy like has these great ideas and then they like start off really interesting and then they just kind of like don't do it.
Yeah.
He's a lot of concept guy and then not great at the execution sometimes.
And another thing that I've just noticed a lot is that, like, especially for like American Horror Story, but I feel like for a lot of his projects, they like will start off really dark and then like always have a happy ending. And I'm like, do we? I mean, like, okay, but sometimes it feels like it goes completely like out of like the genre that we were already in. And I'm like, okay, we have a happy ending now. Also,
yeah, I feel like watching his stories, I always follow a similar like. I don't know, a similar road as I'm watching. Like it starts off really exciting and then it like goes in a weird direction. And then I don't even like, it's like kind of like a slow burn most of the time. Like I feel like every season of American Horror Story, the first episode is super exciting. And then it's really slow. Just don't even know where it's going or what's happening. And then like plot twist and then everything is different by the end. And
yeah. I usually end up falling off of, the shows. I feel like there's been a few that I've like continued, but like a lot of the American Horror Stories, like the first like 2 or 3 seasons, I feel like I watched, and then as it continued, it was like I'd start it and then be like, I don't know, it's not working for me.
Yeah, it like takes a while to find its footing sometimes, and like by the time he gets there, I've tapped out.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will say he's great at picking talent and continuing to use them and finding superstars. You know, he's got a lot of great people that he's used in his projects. That are just awesome. And speaking of that, Robin wants to know if we have any favorite American Horror Story seasons.
Murder House, 150% Murder House all the way.
Yeah,
that's the first one, right?
Yeah. I would say that one, and I liked Coven, I think, as well, and Asylum.
Yeah, I think Asylum is my second favorite. I kind of like them in the order that they came out.
Yeah.
But
And then like progressively, yeah.
but I feel like nothing really excited me as much as Murder House. And I also think it's the scariest one. That was the
Mhm.
most like disturbing, chilling season. And after that it became a little bit lighter, I think, the more popular it became.
Definitely.
But the
Yeah.
first season felt a little bit more risky, I guess.
Really?
I think so. I don't know.
I felt like Asylum was the reason Asylum started losing me is because it seemed like they were doing some things just for shock factor. Like,
I
ooh,
agree.
Yeah.
look how messed up this is. And I'm not a fan of that move in film or TV. So I
I
feel like Murder House had a great balance of like spooky, but digestible and interesting.
Yeah. And it was very concise. It was like, this is the story, this is where we are, these are the
Yeah,
characters, let's just play with them. Asylum, I feel like it just went out of control. Like by the end, I
it
was like,
did.
literally,
It
what is
really did.
happening?
but then it ended in like a happy ending, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
what just happened?
It like went off the crazy train and then it was like, just kidding, here's the finale and now it's over. And I was like,
Yeah.
huh?
But I will say I agree with you, Marianna, that like I feel like as the seasons progress, they just become more like shock for shock's sake, and I'm like, I don't really like that. I'd rather like
No.
following the story than you trying to like freak me out and make me like grossed out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap things up. Thank you guys for joining me for so long. I really appreciate it. And again, if you
This
guys,
was so much fun.
oh, well, thank you. I'm so glad that you guys could join me, and hopefully we can do this again sometime. And again, for everyone who's watching, make sure to check out the description box, which has both Steph and Marianna's links and where you can check them out. Go check out their channels and their videos and their content because they're awesome. And yeah, I will see you guys later. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.